I just finished a workshop. So we'll get a few flies in here. Like Brian earlier, I know some of you were there. I'm going to talk about some early season flies because that's what it is. Well, it's early season down here. It's still winter up at home. I mean, ice hasn't left yet. I'm losing it. So one of the flies we often tie, even though chironomids are the first insect to emerge during the open water season, and in the shallows, they'll start popping off soon after the ice has come off, little tiny guys. But fish still seem to know what a chironomid pupa is, even if they haven't seen any big ones. So a black and red chironomid pupa is probably the standard. If I had one color chironomid, it'd be that, black body, red rib. But I'm going to show you a variation of my chromy that I also use with good success. And I'm going to show you a new type of bead that's come out. We fish a lot of bead-headed patterns with chironomids. Beads add weight. They help suggest the profile of the pupa. And white beads have been very popular for years, ice cream cone style flies. But the challenge with a white bead sometimes is the whole bead itself is too much. It's too white, it's too stark. And a lot of times early season, the water is clear because it's cold, algae won't form yet because it's stimulated by warm sunny days. So sometimes that white bead sticks out a bit too much. So you can either use a black bead-headed pattern, but now they've got new tungsten beads come out that are half beads, two-tone. So I'm going to tie a fly with kind of a half and half. So a lot of times with chironomid pupa, if you look at them, they'll have their white gills, and then their thorax is often more wing pad than thorax. You can see it's kind of a brownish color. So we use a lot of rust brown thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two beads, and they're 7/64 diameter. So this is a number 10 Daiichi 1120 hook. Okay, we like using curved scud pupa hooks for chironomids because, as you can see, this is a short shank hook. So even though this is a size 10, and I'm tying it big for demo purposes so you can see easier, but I probably tie 10s through 16s. And with a short shank hook, this number 10 imitates a size 12 chironomid pupa of a standard length. So I get a bigger hook, heavier hook, that still imitates kind of a one size down chironomid pupa. This hook too, once you put this in a fish's mouth, because its shank is so short, it's very hard for a fish to throw it. It's got no leverage, okay? And the curved profile of the hook matches how chironomids kind of sit and wiggle, and under a non-slip loop knot, either on a long leader or under an indicator, this fly is going to move a little easier and suggest a pupa. So what we're going to do is I've got to thread these two half beads, so I'm going to take one out and try not to dump it on the floor. And these just came out. Brian and I get these from a Canadian online supplier called Canadian Llama. I think if you use PR code 2018, you get 10% off. And he has a lot of these. He has a great selection of regular tungsten beads and metal beads and the frit. Crap, I did the one thing I didn't want to do. Dumped them all over the place. So I'll just pick up everything but the one I want. So we got one here. So I'm just going to take this off, and I put the one bead in my hand. I'll just do this off camera. And I'm going to do this in stages. So that one's on there. Okay? That's the white front. The back side of this bead has kind of a keyway. One thing sticking out and a hole going the other way. So when the other bead comes in, they lock together. So we can now there's a black one. You could do black with red. In fact, that's what we'll do because it's handy. There's silver, copper, think of all the different, and if you guys tie European nymphs, which I do because I like doing that, there's going to be fluorescent ones coming out. So now you could have a hot orange spot, a hot spot, a chartreuse, hot pink.
Winner is 2041, 2045.
I'm just trying to get one out of here. I got it. So we'll put this guy on. So this you do in the palm of your, generally with beads, I like to put the bead in the palm of my hand like this, and it forms, just by cupping my hand, it forms a little hollow, so the bead will roll into the center, kind of like a clown's eyes on those kids' toys, right? And then I just put my hook point in it, and I stab it on. And in this case, I'm going to stab the wide open end onto the hook. and get it on there.
1944.
I gotta slow down. Oh. That was just for demo to see how I do it. Close the bag. Again, put this on here. The wide end, I don't know if you probably can't see that. Get that sucker on. And now I got the two things on. And once these are in the jaw, they're on there. So what I'm going to do now is just sort of twist these around and get, does the camera show, but this one here at the top, there's a little sticking out. So I got to make sure that that's on the other side, and it is, and I just push the two together and they lock. Of course, my eyesight is so crappy. Get those up. There we go. Lock together. And now, and once they lock like that, they don't come apart. I was given a 3D plastic, a 3D printer of this thing about as big as I put them together. They're on my desk. I can't get them apart. And Kent says at Canadian Land, well, just take a razor blade and pry them. That's not going to happen. You see what I am with two beads? I'd be blood everywhere, right? So I've got that on. So now I've got the benefit here. I'll just push this tight up. I now have the subtle white gills and sort of that thorax behind, and the brown thread is going to help suggest the brownish colored wing pads. Right, just little specks of color. So I'm good. Now the rest is just tying a chironomid. So we're going down the hook shank. When I'm tying chironomids, I want to go into the bend a little bit. So you see how my thread's on about a 45-degree angle? That's where I'll go to. And then I'll come back up, stop just in front here. I'm going to put my beads away a little bit because you've seen what I'm like. I've probably put $16 on the floor already. Okay. And for the ribbing on my chromie, it was originally red wire, and that still works, but I like the flashaboos, the holographics, either mylar or flashaboo like this. You get the mylar on the spool too. So we'll grab our scissors, because we're rushing around like a chicken with my head cut off. Grab a pair of scissors. Because what I did here, if you'll notice, if you're dealing with flashaboos, anything in these packages, if you pull them out, they go everywhere. They get all tangled up, you get frustrated, you end up buying, you consume it. Flashaboo likes it because you're buying lots of it. If you cut a little notch in here, so I've gone through on this side, I can reach in with my scissors points and pull out what I want. I only get the one or the two. So I use the package to help. So we're going to take a length of this.
1848.
And if this was mylar on a spool, what? If this was mylar on a spool, I would be using size small. Okay? So I'm just going to hold this up to the side of the hook and secure. I like to secure the mylar along the side, or if anything, a little slightly towards the underside of the hook. Okay? So I get that secured. Then we're going to go back up. Now we want to keep, I like skinny chironomids, but one of the tricks to keeping them skinny is tying things along the entire length of the hook, because you don't have a lot of leeway for bulk underneath. So you want a nice smooth body, so you need that all the way along. You don't want to have a big bulbous back end on this thing because it'll look unnatural. So the original chromie was tied using silver flashaboo, but it's evolved now, silver flashaboo and a red rib, and I now tie it in that original configuration because the chromie comes about when chironomids are emerging. They use trapped gases to help elevate. They generate the gases underneath the skin of the pupa, and that gives them buoyancy and helps them elevate to the surface and emerge. It gives them a nice shiny look to them. Okay, just making sure that bead's good. Yeah, that's good. Early in the emergence, that inflated pupa is not that silvery bright. The more it gets towards when it's going to transform into the adult, the more silvery it becomes. But early in the emergence and at depth, they're a little more darker, and they'll get brighter and brighter and brighter as they progress. And they can take 1 day, 4 days to stage along the bottom, right? And also that little flicker of silver catches light and attracts trout over to them. So one of the things we do is we use a gunmetal color. And this is where the gunmetal chromie comes from. It's Flashabou color 6916. That's the original stuff. That's the new stuff. They're both good colors. Okay, they're just different. And now you can get Montana Fly makes it. You can use holographic black mylar works as well. Just this kind of silvery black shine. So we're just going to go in and grab a couple of strands. I like to use the 2 strands for this. So again, I reach in with my scissors points and try to pull out just 2, or in this case 3, that's fine. And I'm going to take this and moisten it. Hold it together, and I'm going to trim the ends even so they're nice, so they're easy to tie in. And I'm just going to get them tied in like so and let them hang. I'm actually going to just sort of let them hang this way. And I'm going to reach into my bag. And I am going to take out some brushable super glue, because Flashabou is not durable. So if you didn't do anything to protect this fly, it's not going to last too long, okay? Which is also good for Flashabou sales, right? So I'm just going to take some brushable super glue, crazy glue with a Loctite Zap-A-Gap, and I'm just going to brush the shank. And then I'm just going to start winding backwards. And what I'm doing is I'm going to be bonding the Flashabou on the underside and adding durability to it. We're also going to give this a top coat. So I'm going to go down to where the butt is and then reverse direction. And by doing this, I get the benefit of covering up any mistakes I made, any gaps. And when you overwrap a material with itself, it doesn't want to unravel as much. So if you slip your grip or it's fish chews it a bit, it's going to be a little more durable. So we're going to take this right up behind, and I can build up a little taper. I said I do like skinny chironomids, right? But it's okay to have a little bit of taper. So a little bit in the front third, it gets a little wider, but don't overdo it, okay? And now we're just going to, again, I've got that thread pushing right at the back of the bead, and now I'm going to take my red holographic mylar here, and I'm just tilting it a little bit so I can see a little better, and I'm going to put about 2 or 3 wraps, almost one on top of each other, to build up a little red butt. And then I'm just going to open it up and wind forward. And my target is to get 7 ribs for 9 segments. So usually if I hit 4 ribs by the hook point, I should be all right. 5, 6, 7-ish. And that should be fine. If you only get 6, it's not the end of the world. I firmly believe that fish can't count. And if they can, you're not going to catch that one anyway. So the tying portion is basically done. I'm going to counter spin my bobbin, counterclockwise. That'll take any twist out of it, because this is Rusty Brown, MFC 80, Rusty Brown UTC works well. And I'm just going to build up a little brown thread thorax. On my original chromie, if I was using a solid color bead and yarn gills, I would use peacock herl. I still like having a little peacock herl to cover it up. And then I'm just going to whip finish. If I brought those things with me. Again, I apologize for not being ready. And all I'm going to do now is do 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I built up, if you notice, the thorax on this has a little bit of a taper to it, okay? Now, when you're building up a thread taper, build it up gradually. Don't try to go like this with your thread, because when you whip finish and go to tighten, it's all going to domino down, okay? So that's basically done. So now we're going to coat this for added shine and durability. We could certainly use Our super glue will work, but I like using the Solara's resin, the bone dry. This stuff dries tack-free. Right? I really like it over the other stuffs, and it still works good. Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails nail polish we used to use for years. There's it's all the same, it all works. Right? But this stuff is nice and thin. And I'm just going to, the beauty of this stuff is it doesn't cure until so I'm just going to go along and coat everything. Even you can even put a little bit of coating on the bead to stop, any accidental chipping that goes on if you ping it off the side or something. Right? And we're just going to brush this on. And I might do a couple of coats, so I always put the lid back on. If you see me what I'm like with beads, you can imagine what I'm like with that. And then we're just going to go. And as Dave Allison likes to tease me, I call this sunlight in a tube. This is a UV light. This does not give the fly any UV properties. It uses ultraviolet light to cure the resin. Okay, if you were to take this outside, well, maybe not today, but that's UV light. That's what you're doing here, right? Now this light, this is a Solara's light. It's a little spendy, right? What it does too, sometimes with these resins, and I'll put a second coat on, sometimes with these resins, you'll see a little smoke come off, which is always a bit disconcerting, right? And what's happening is that smoke inhibits the curing process, right? It's heat. That's what's causing it. So with this light, the beauty of this light is if I double click it, I'm usually too fast with this thing because I'm turning it off and on. It will alternate pulse. Of course, it's not doing it because I'm not operating it right. There we go. So it'll alternate. It'll cure better actually on this alternating off on, because it won't generate as much heat, it won't cause that smoke. The other nice thing about this light is the battery in it's rechargeable. So you spend a little more on the light, but it comes with a little charger. You plug that in the wall and you're good to go. So that's that's a gunmetal chromie. And again, this style with these two-tone beads, the combinations are limitless. Black with a red rib, the original chromie, greens, olives. Generally with Chironomid pupa, I start dark and work my way lighter. So dark, blacks, browns, olives, light greens, and if they start to become more active, you're seeing more Chironomids emerging, you're going to see more of those shinier ones. Okay?